They said it was my birthday. Balloons, cake, smiling faces. But when I stepped into the room and saw the banner, "Congrats, Evan," my heart dropped. My younger brother had just landed a new job, and apparently my birthday was just the backdrop. I smiled politely, stayed silent, and left early. 2 weeks later, Evan would be calling me from a police station crying, and not once did I feel bad, because when the people who are supposed to love you the most treat you like you're invisible for years, there comes a time when silence isn't peace, it's survival. I stepped through the front door, juggling a modestly wrapped box and a bottle of sparkling cider. The house smelled like vanilla candles and buttercream, and the sound of upbeat pop music floated in from the living room. For a split second, my chest fluttered. Maybe, just maybe, they had remembered. Maybe this year was different. Then I saw the banner, gold foil letters strung across the fireplace mantel in a cheerful arc. "Congrats, Evan!" The letters shimmered under the light, glinting like teeth. I froze. The bottle slipped a little in my grip, catching against the gift box. I blinked once, twice, hoping I'd misread it. But there it was, unmistakable. The applause wasn't for me. It never had been. People turned and smiled as I walked in, and for a cruel heartbeat, I almost believed it. I smiled back, swallowing the lump forming in my throat. "Happy birthday, Claire," someone called, almost like an afterthought. Another guest offered a weak smile. "Nice to see you again. It's been a while." I looked around, searching for my parents. Balloons filled the ceiling. A long buffet table overflowed with hors d'oeuvres, cupcakes, even a small chocolate fountain. And dead centre, a 3-tiered cake with Evan's grinning face printed in edible ink. Underneath, in gold frosting, "Congratulations on your new role." I had to force my jaw shut. I edged through the crowd, still clutching the bottle and gift box like a shield. Evan hadn't even arrived yet. People were laughing, sipping wine, posing for selfies against a glitter wall. Nobody noticed me weaving silently through the noise. I made my way to the kitchen and found my mother arranging finger sandwiches on a platter. "Hi, Mum," I said, softly. She looked up, startled, then a flicker of guilt crossed her face, quickly masked by a too-bright smile. "Claire, oh good, you made it. Isn't it lovely?" "Yeah," I said, just wondering. "Did you mean to do this on my birthday?" Her smile faltered. "Well, we thought it'd be nice to celebrate both, you know. Evan just got the promotion, and your birthday's always been low-key. You don't like attention, right?" I didn't answer. My grip tightened on the bottle. Before I could speak, Dad wandered in with a glass of punch. "Hey, birthday girl," he said, beaming like nothing was wrong. "We got your favourite cake flavour. Chocolate raspberry, right? See, we didn't forget." He didn't even notice the cake had Evan's name on it. That's when Evan finally arrived. He strolled in like a celebrity, wearing a crisp white blazer, sunglasses on his head, and that effortless grin that always earned him praise. People cheered. Someone popped confetti. My mum nearly clapped with both hands full. Evan spotted me and sauntered over, arms wide. "Claire, you're here. Oh my God, this is perfect. We can totally make it a shared party." I stood frozen. He leaned in and mock-kissed the air beside my cheek. "Hope you don't mind. We kinda used your card for the catering. Mum said it'd be easier since you still had that old one linked to the family account. You cool with that?" Something inside me cracked. Not a loud break, just a quiet, clean fracture. I set the bottle and box down on the counter. "Sure," I said. My voice didn't even tremble. Then I walked out. No one followed me. No one asked if I was okay. No one noticed I'd left. The silence in my car was deafening. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't make any calls. I just sat at a red light, staring at the glow on my dashboard like it might explain what had just happened. After a few moments, I pulled into the nearest parking lot and opened my phone, not to scroll social media, but to check my banking app. A strange instinct nudged me, like a whisper saying, "Look deeper." And there it was, a $1,000 charge from a local event venue. 2 separate floral orders totaling $400, a $700 bakery purchase with a note. "Congrats, Evan, you did it." All of it dated within the past week. All of it charged to the credit card I hadn't used in over a year, one I'd forgotten to cancel because it was still linked to our old shared grocery account. My fingers went numb. I sat there for a long time, staring at the list of transactions, my name on the billing, my card, my birthday, funding a celebration that wasn't mine. There wasn't even a single charge for me. No gift, no dinner reservation, not even a grocery store bouquet of clearance roses. At home, the quiet wrapped around me like a weighted blanket. I dropped my keys, stepped out of my shoes, and left the bottle of cider on the counter unopened. I sank onto the couch without turning on the lights. My phone buzzed. A message from my mum. "You made Evan uncomfortable by walking out. That was supposed to be a happy moment for him. Please don't make everything about you. We tried." I stared at the screen, not shocked, just hollow. This wasn't the first time, not even close. I remembered turning 15 and waiting all day for someone to say happy birthday. At dinner, my mum had whispered that Evan had a migraine, so we'd postpone the celebration. It never happened. When I turned 21, my dad said he had an emergency meeting. We had takeout 2 days later. No candles, no cake. They always had a reason. Evan needed quiet. Evan had midterms. Evan was stressed. Evan was somehow always the centre of gravity. One year I brought it up just once. I asked if we could do something just for me. My mum frowned and said, "Don't be dramatic, Claire. Not everything is about you." And I believed her. For years I believed maybe I really was too sensitive, too needy, too selfish for asking to be seen. But now, staring at the glowing numbers on my screen, the frost of her text still fresh, I realised something terrifying. I wasn't angry. I wasn't about to scream or throw my phone or sob into a pillow. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want an apology. I just wanted out. I sat in the dark for hours that night, reliving all the tiny wounds that had built up over decades. Evan's smirks, my parents' excuses, the subtle corrections when I said I feel hurt, the way they always made me feel like love was a currency I had to earn, but that Evan received just for existing. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't break anything. That would have at least felt alive. Instead, I just existed, like background noise, like furniture, and somehow that hurt more than rage ever could. The memories didn't come all at once. They seeped in, quiet and corrosive, as I sat on the couch that night, the room dark except for the glow from my phone. They weren't loud memories, no screaming matches, no slammed doors. Just moments, small, forgettable to anyone else, but etched into me like scars no one could see. I was 9 when Evan shattered the glass coffee table. He'd been jumping on the couch, pretending it was a pirate ship. One poorly aimed leap, and the corner snapped clean off, shards everywhere. I was in the next room reading, when Mum came in and saw the mess. Evan was already crying. "She told me to do it," he sobbed, pointing at me. I blinked at him, stunned. "What?" Mum didn't ask questions. "Claire, go to your room. No TV for a week. I'm disappointed in you." I stayed quiet. I didn't even know how to argue back then. I thought maybe she'd figure it out later. She didn't. That night, Evan got ice cream because he was so shaken up. The next time was worse. Evan was 11 when he took $40 from Mum's purse. I found the crumpled bills stuffed into his sock drawer while helping him clean his room. I didn't want to get him in trouble. I genuinely thought it was a mistake. So I brought the money to Mum and said, "I think Evan forgot he put this here." By dinner, I was grounded for invading his privacy. Evan got a new video game that weekend. I watched him play it from the stairs, my arms wrapped around my knees. At 14, I made the school soccer team. It was the first thing that felt like mine, like I was good at something and it mattered. I remember bringing home the permission slip for weekend practices, my heart pounding with excitement. Mum skimmed it and frowned. "Saturday mornings? That won't work. Evan has music lessons." "But I can," I started. "Sweetheart, we only have one car. Evan's program is expensive. We can't jeopardise that." I nodded, but something inside me curled up and went quiet. I never turned in the form. The coach asked twice, then stopped. I never told him why. In school, I did everything right. Straight A's, never missed an assignment, volunteered, tutored. Evan scraped by with C's and a trail of excuses. Every time I brought home a perfect report card, Dad would say, "Good, that's what we expect." When Evan brought home a beat that, Mum would beam. "See, he's improving. He's under a lot of pressure, you know." No one asked what pressure I was under. By 17, I'd stopped trying to impress them. I got a part-time job after school, saved for college, applied for scholarships in secret. I didn't tell them when I got accepted into a state university with full aid. I knew they'd find a way to make it about Evan. They always did. And through it all, I kept telling myself that maybe someday it would even out. That once we were adults, things would balance, that they'd see who I was and what I'd done and finally say, "We're proud of you, Claire." But that moment never came. Instead, I became the one they expected to be okay, the one who didn't need help, the one who would always understand. And Evan, he became the one they protected, no matter the cost, even when it was me paying it. I was 19 when it happened, my sophomore year. It had rained all day, one of those relentless spring storms that turned every road into a hazard. I was driving back to campus after picking up a shift at a diner just outside town. Halfway through a curved intersection, my tyres slipped. The car spun once, twice, before colliding sideways into a guardrail. The impact wasn't life-threatening, but it was enough. Airbags deployed, the windows shattered. My arm ached where it hit the steering wheel. I sat in that car, dazed, rain leaking through the cracked windshield, engine still running. The first person I thought to call was my mum. Her voice sounded groggy, like I'd woken her. "What? Claire?" I was in a crash," I said. "I'm okay, but the car's not. I don't know what to—" She cut me off. "Claire, why would you call now? Evan's taking his engineering final. If he hears the phone ring, he'll panic. You want him to fail?" I blinked, stunned. No, I just thought, "I'll call you later," she said, and hung up. I stared at my phone. I wasn't even crying. My hand was shaking, but my chest felt empty. Not fear, not pain. Just the solid weight of knowing where I stood in her priorities. I didn't call anyone else. Not Dad, not even a friend. I waited for the tow truck alone, rain soaking through my jeans, blood slowly drying on my sleeve. When I finally got back to campus hours later, I went to bed and didn't tell anyone. It was easier that way. A few weeks after that, I made a plan. I didn't pack much. A duffel bag with clothes, some savings I'd scraped together, my acceptance letter to a summer research program in another state. I wasn't going to tell them. I was just going to leave. But when I stood at the door that morning, bag in hand, something stopped me. Not guilt. Something colder. A question. Would they even notice I was gone? I didn't leave that day. I put the bag back under my bed and said nothing, but something shifted inside me. That summer I worked double shifts at a coffee shop, ate whatever leftovers I could carry home, and emailed professors about extra credit research. I learned how to apply for grants, how to navigate student aid bureaucracy, how to fake a confident tone in emails. Every penny I needed for school I earned. Every book I read, every class I passed, I did it without them. I never once asked for help again. And strange as it sounds, that summer was the first time I felt a sliver of peace. No expectations, no guilt, just me, working towards something I chose. There was power in that, freedom even. I wasn't just surviving, I was building something. For a while I let myself believe it might be enough, that if I worked hard enough, proved myself enough, they'd see me. Not just the role I played in their narrative, not the responsible sister, not the fallback plan, just me. And for a while I almost believed that was coming. But some lessons come later than they should. And others, no matter how much time passes, come back the moment someone says, "We thought you didn't mind." It started with a subject line, "Suspicious activity detected, action required." I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But the bank's logo looked right, and something in my gut told me to look closer. I clicked. Inside was a list of recent transactions flagged for manual review. The system had noticed an unusual spending spike. I scrolled down and my blood ran cold. A $1,000 venue reservation, a $700 bakery charge, a $400 floral order, all within 3 days, all tagged to a card I hadn't used in over a year. I blinked. That card had been linked to our family's grocery delivery account, one I used during the pandemic when we were all staying with our parents. I'd meant to cancel it, but after things settled down, it slipped my mind. Apparently, it hadn't slipped Evan's. I clicked on the itemised invoice for the event venue. The contact name listed, Evan Harper, his email, his phone number. But my credit card, same with the cake order. A 3-tiered design with custom edible printing. Theme, celebrating excellence. Pick up 1 day before my birthday, billed to me, claimed by him. I felt sick. At first I tried to tell myself it had to be a mistake, maybe a mix-up. Maybe Mum had used the old card by accident. Maybe Evan didn't know. But the details didn't lie. Each receipt clearly had Evan's contact info in the recipient fields. He'd typed in my card number manually. Expiration date, security code, billing zip. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was theft. And I'd been standing at that party smiling like a fool, thinking I was overreacting. I opened the digital receipt for the floral arrangement. In the notes section, make it pop. My sister's not big on flowers, but this is my night. I stared at the screen, stunned by the audacity. Not only had he used my card, he'd bragged about it. That same day, I received a text from Evan. No apology, no explanation. Just, hey, I need to Venmo you for part of the Uber, right? Since it was your birthday too, LOL. I didn't answer. Instead, I began compiling everything. I screenshotted every charge, downloaded PDFs of the receipts, cross-checked email addresses, timestamps, delivery notes. I searched my own inbox and found nothing, because he'd done it all through his accounts. I only got the bank alert because the algorithm thought I might be a victim of fraud. It was right, twist the knife. Every one of those transactions had been placed over a week before the party. He hadn't just decided to use my card last minute. He planned it, knew what he was doing, and he'd done it anyway, fully expecting I'd be too quiet to fight back. But he'd miscalculated one thing. I wasn't the same Claire anymore. The next morning, I called my mother. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some disbelief, maybe concern, maybe even an apology. But I should have known better. After all, it wasn't the first time I'd walked straight into a conversation hoping for accountability and walked out carrying someone else's shame. I told her what I'd found. The charges, the receipts, the name Evan Harper on every single one. I kept my tone steady, factual. She sighed like I'd just brought up a minor inconvenience. Claire, are you really going to make a big deal out of this? I'm not making a big deal, I said. I'm telling you he stole from me. Oh, come on, he's your brother. Families share things all the time. This wasn't sharing, Mum. He used a card I never gave him. I didn't authorise anything. There was a long pause, then the final blow. Do you really want to put something like this between you and your only sibling? That was it. Not shock, not concern, just emotional blackmail. And yet, none of it surprised me. I hung up without another word. Later that day, something itched in the back of my mind. A conversation from months ago during Thanksgiving. I remembered stepping away from the kitchen to take a call and leaving my wallet on the counter. Evan had been nearby. It had been quick, 30 seconds, maybe less. Could he have? I opened the home surveillance app we'd installed last year after a string of neighbourhood thefts. I hadn't looked at it in months, but the system automatically stored footage for up to 6 months on a cloud server. I searched the date, November 24th. There it was. At timestamp 6:13 p.m, you could see me stepping away from the kitchen. Evan enters frame seconds later. He glances around, then picks up my wallet. He tilts it towards him, camera just catching the glint of my card. A phone appears in his hand. Click, click. He sets the wallet back down before anyone walks in. My hands shook. I paused the video, re-watched it again. Any doubt I'd been clinging to evaporated. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a moment of desperation. It was calculated, and they expected me to stay silent. That night, I sat at my desk, the folder of documents open in front of me, statements, receipts, the video still. The light of my laptop reflected off the laminate as I opened a new tab and searched how to file a credit fraud report against a family member. The words felt surreal even as I typed them. But this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about drama. It was about reality. Because I couldn't keep living like I didn't matter, like my boundaries didn't exist, like my silence was owed. I printed everything, put it in a manila folder, wrote my name on the front, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like someone who was done being quiet. The police station was colder than I expected. Not physically, though the fluorescent lights gave the place an icy feel, but emotionally. The air carried that sterile weight of bureaucracy, of long nights and louder silences. I stood in the lobby for a moment, watching people shuffle in and out, a man shouting into his phone, a woman clutching paperwork like it was armour. No one made eye contact. No one smiled. I walked to the front desk and waited until the officer behind the glass looked up. "Can I help you?" "I'd like to file a report," I said. "About what?" "Credit fraud." He reached for a form. "Are you the card holder?" "Yes." "Do you have evidence?" I slid the folder across the counter. "Everything's in there. Transaction records, receipts, a video. The charges were made using my credit card without consent." He nodded, flipping open the folder. His eyes scanned the first few pages before pausing. "You said these purchases were made by Evan Harper." I nodded once. He looked up, surprised. "That's your brother?" "Yes." His eyebrows lifted slightly, more curious than judgmental. "And you want to move forward with this?" "Yes." A pause. He tilted his head. "Most people don't report family." I leaned slightly closer, keeping my voice even. Family is supposed to protect you, not treat you like a resource, not steal from you and expect silence. I'm not doing this to punish him. I'm doing it so I can breathe again. He held my gaze for a second longer, then nodded. "All right." I sat across from him in a small interview room that smelled faintly of coffee and cheap sanitizer. The wall clock ticked with unnerving precision. He asked me to walk him through everything, how I found out, when I noticed the charges, whether I had confronted the accused. I answered each question clearly, methodically. I didn't embellish. I didn't editorialise. He jotted notes and nodded along, occasionally typing something into a computer. When I mentioned the surveillance footage, he paused. "You have that with you?" "Yes." USB drive labelled. It's time-stamped and shows him taking a photo of the card. He took the drive, marked it as evidence. At one point he glanced at me again and said, "You're very calm." I shrugged. "I've had years to practice." He gave me a small, respectful nod. "Fair enough." There were no dramatics, no tears, no emotional outburst, just a quiet woman filing a report against the people who taught her silence. When we finished, he handed me a copy of the paperwork and said the case would move forward through financial crimes. He explained the process, possible follow-ups, options for pressing charges or mediation. I listened carefully, asked a few clarifying questions and thanked him. As I stood to leave, he said, "I hope this brings you peace." I didn't smile, I didn't nod. I just said, "It's not about peace, it's about not disappearing." I stepped outside into the bright afternoon. The sun was blinding after the dim interior, but it felt almost ironic, like the world was brighter now that I had spoken out. And yet I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt empty. Not the aching void I used to carry around like second skin, but a different kind of emptiness. The stillness that comes after the storm. The moment after you scream into a pillow and there's nothing left. No tears came. I didn't cry when I got in the car. I didn't shake. I didn't call a friend. I drove home in silence, windows down, the wind rushing past me like I was trying to outrun something invisible. Back in my apartment, I placed the copy of the report on the kitchen table. Just seeing it there felt surreal. Not because I regretted it, but because I'd finally done something they couldn't ignore. I made tea and curled up on the couch, phone face down. I didn't want to see the fallout yet. I knew it would come. It always did. But for now, in that small, quiet space, I wasn't the forgotten daughter or the backup plan or the one who always gave in. I was just Claire. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. The first call came at 6:13 a.m. I'd just sat down with a cup of coffee, still in pyjamas, when my phone buzzed insistently. Evan. I let it ring out. He called again and again. On the fourth call I answered, not out of concern, but to make it stop. His voice was panicked, cracking between sobs. Claire, oh my God, why would you do this to me? They're saying fraud. They're saying legal action. I said nothing. You filed a report? He asked, voice rising. Are you seriously ruining your own brother's life over a few party charges? Evan, I said calmly, you stole my card. It was a party for both of us, he snapped. Mum said it was fine. I almost laughed. So that makes it legal? He hesitated, then pivoted. Claire, please, you know what this could do to me. You've always been the responsible one. Why are you doing this now? Because I'm tired of being responsible for cleaning up your messes. He went quiet, then hung up. By mid-morning, the next wave hit. Mum. Her message was short but heavy. I can't believe what you're doing. You're tearing this family apart. Evan is devastated. You should be ashamed. No apology. No recognition of what had happened. Just blame. By noon, I was getting cold shoulders from every direction. Aunt Denise unfollowed me on Facebook. Dad didn't reply to my texts. My cousin, who hadn't spoken to me in 2 years, suddenly messaged, Family isn't perfect, but we don't air our dirty laundry. This is low, Claire. I didn't respond. I let the silence build. Let them stew in their assumptions. But then it got uglier. 2 days later, my boss called me into her office. She was direct, no nonsense as always. Claire, she said, sliding her laptop forward, I got this email yesterday. Thought you should see it. The subject line read, Concern for Claire Harper, possible mental health crisis. It was unsigned, anonymous, claimed to be a concerned family friend. Said I was acting erratically and lashing out in destructive ways, and that my co-workers should keep an eye on me. I read the email twice, then looked at my boss. Evan, I said. She nodded, figured. It was oddly specific and cowardly. I waited for her to ask questions, to pry, to offer one of those thin-lipped HR smiles. But she didn't. She just closed the laptop and said, Let me know if you want us to block his email, otherwise I assume you're handling it. I stared at her. She believed me. No dramatics, no suspicion, just belief. Something cracked, not in a painful way, but in quiet relief. The kind of crack that lets air in after years of suffocating. Thank you, I said softly. She gave a small shrug. Everyone's got a story. You're still showing up, but still doing your job better than half the people here. That's what I care about. As I walked out of her office, I felt a shift inside me. Not a full transformation. Those don't happen overnight, but a flicker. A subtle, almost imperceptible lift in my chest. Someone had finally chosen to believe me, and for the first time the weight I'd been carrying didn't feel quite so heavy. The Zoom call was scheduled for Sunday night. No one asked if I was free. I simply received a message from my father. We need to talk. 7 p.m, family meeting. No subject line, no apology, just expectation. At 6:58, I sat in front of my laptop, debating whether to click the link. Every part of me knew what was coming. This wasn't going to be a conversation, it was going to be a tribunal. A family intervention, except I wasn't the one spiralling, I was just the one who'd finally said no. Still, I joined. My screen filled with familiar faces. Dad in his home office adjusting his glasses. Mum in the living room framed by family photos, none of which included me, past high school. Evan lounging in a hoodie, his face puffy like he'd been crying all day. No one said hello. Mum started. Claire, we're all here because we're concerned. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. I didn't reply. Dad picked up. We understand you're upset, but going to the police, that was extreme. I was stolen from, I said. Evan scoffed. Oh my God, it was a few charges. You act like I took out a mortgage in your name. You used my card without asking. That's fraud. Mum waved her hand, like brushing off a fly. You always had a tendency to exaggerate, Claire. This isn't about legalities. It's about family. And family, Dad added, means forgiveness. It means working through things, not weaponising them. I bit my tongue. The hypocrisy would have been laughable if it weren't so familiar. Evan leaned in, his voice thick with performance. You know, this is really hurting me. My job offer's on hold. People are asking questions. I could lose everything I've worked for. And I suppose that's my fault, I asked. His eyes narrowed. You made it your fault. I took a breath, steadying myself. No, you made choices. I'm just holding you accountable. Then it happened. Mom leaned forward, her tone shifting from exasperated to icy. "Well, you want to talk about choices, Claire. Let's talk about the abortion." My lungs emptied. The silence in the call was instant and absolute. My ears rang. "That was a mistake," Mum said, "and I kept your secret. I didn't judge. But maybe it's time we look at patterns. You push people away, you self-sabotage. Maybe this situation with Evan is just another way for you to punish yourself." I couldn't speak, couldn't move. That memory, so private, so painful, was never meant to leave our kitchen. I was 20, alone, terrified, and she was the only person I'd told. She'd held my hand afterward, told me she loved me, told me no one ever needed to know. Now she used it like a knife. I stared at her through the screen, wondering if she'd always been capable of this, or if I'd just refused to see it. Evan shifted uncomfortably. Even Dad looked away, but no one said, "That was wrong." No one said, "Apologise." They just sat there, letting her betrayal fester in the open air. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't slam my laptop shut. I simply said thank you for confirming everything I needed to know. Then I ended the call. I sat in the quiet afterward, my breath shallow, my stomach hollow. That moment, those words, had punctured something deeper than anything else they'd ever done. Not because of the secret, but because of the intent. It was deliberate, cold, calculated, and it made something crystal clear. They didn't want resolution, they wanted submission, but they weren't going to get it. Not anymore. They tried again the next night. Another Zoom link, another terse message. "Let's be adults about this. Talk it through properly." Dad. I wasn't planning to join, but I did. Not for closure, not for healing, for clarity. This time I came prepared. When the screen flickered on, Evan was already mid-rant. "Blowing this out of proportion? You have no idea how hard I've worked. Do you know how embarrassing this is? My firm asked for a background check. I might not even start next month." He didn't see me yet. His voice filled the space with indignation, not remorse. My mother sat stone-faced, arms crossed. My father looked tired, like someone who regretted being part of the call but couldn't admit it. I waited until Evan saw my face. He stopped mid-sentence, eyes narrowing. "So you're here to fight again?" "No," I said. "I'm here to show you what fighting back really looks like." I reached off screen and lifted a printed folder. "This is a record of every unauthorised charge you made with my card. The venue, the bakery, the florist, the catering service, with itemised receipts. Your name is listed on the customer info. My name on the billing. This is a crime, Evan." He scoffed, but I kept going. I held up a screenshot. "This is the banking alert that triggered my investigation. The algorithm flagged it as suspicious based on my spending history. That's what started this." I clicked to share my screen. "This," I said, pulling up the video file, "is footage from Thanksgiving last year. Watch closely." Evan's face drained. The video showed him entering the kitchen after I stepped away, picking up my wallet, lifting my card, snapping a photo, setting it back down. He blinked rapidly. That doesn't prove anything. Maybe I was looking for your phone." "No," I said evenly. "You looked around, took the photo and walked away. The timestamp matches the window before the venue was booked. The IP address used for the orders, logged from your apartment Wi-Fi. The room, or rather the digital space, went dead quiet." My mother was the first to speak. "Claire, this is still family. We don't need to involve outside people." "Too late," I replied. "My attorney has already drafted a cease and desist. You'll receive it by the end of the week." Dad leaned forward, trying to reassert authority. "Claire, we can resolve this privately. There's no need to escalate." "You mean there's no need to expose what you've all allowed for years?" "No one allowed anything," Evan barked. "You lied, you stole, and instead of owning it, you played victim, like always." His jaw clenched. "Why are you doing this?" I met his eyes. "Because I finally understand that being quiet isn't the same as being kind. It's just how I disappeared." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I let the evidence speak for me. And in that moment, something shifted. They had no words. Not even my mother. Their silence wasn't peaceful. It was the hollow vacuum that follows a collapsing structure. Something cracked in their narrative and they didn't know how to fix it. So I made it easy. I reached behind my laptop and pulled the cord. The screen went dark in an instant. No goodbye, no dramatic exit, just a click, a full, clean cut. I sat there staring at my blank screen. Then I slowly stood, unplugged the laptop, closed it and tucked it into its sleeve. That wasn't just the end of a video call. It was the end of a role I had played for far too long. The silent supporter, the peacekeeper, the one who swallowed pain for the sake of family. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. The email from the precinct came on a Tuesday afternoon. Subject: Settlement option Harper case #0412 FC. It was short, polite, formal. Evan had been offered a pre-trial resolution. If he accepted full responsibility for the unauthorised charges, enrolled in a financial accountability workshop, paid restitution in full, and completed 100 hours of community service, the case would be closed. No formal charges, no court record, no public humiliation. A clean slate, if he owned up. I stared at the message, rereading the terms. It was more generous than I expected, and honestly, it was more than I'd hoped for. I didn't want Evan in prison. I didn't want a drawn-out legal battle. I just wanted accountability. Recognition that what he did wasn't a misunderstanding or a family spat. It was a violation. I took a breath and replied to the officer, "I support this offer. Please proceed." Within hours, my phone began buzzing again. Dad called first. "Claire, thank you. This is the right thing. You're being the bigger person. We can finally put this behind us." I didn't correct him. I knew this wasn't about putting it behind. It was about them avoiding public consequences. Mum texted next. "This is such a relief. You've made the smart choice. I always said you were the rational one." I almost laughed. Her approval always came cloaked in self-interest. Evan didn't reach out. Not at first, but 3 days later I received another email, this time from the officer handling the case. Subject: Harper case resolution update. Evan had rejected the deal. He refused to admit guilt. He refused the workshop, the restitution, the community service. His reason, as relayed by the officer, agreeing to that would make me look guilty. I'm not ruining my name over a technicality. A technicality. I sat there stunned. Not because he'd declined, but because he still believed he could spin this into something salvageable. That somehow, in his mind, using someone else's credit card, planning an event in their name and lying about it was just a misunderstanding. That was the story he'd always told himself. And our parents had let him. I called the officer to confirm. "Legally," she said, "we're obligated to proceed with charges if the deal is declined, unless you withdraw the complaint." I didn't hesitate. "I'm not withdrawing." Another pause. She lowered her voice. "You should know. Your brother's attorney contacted the department. They're planning to argue it was a family miscommunication, that he had verbal permission, that your mother will testify in his favour." Of course she would. I thanked the officer and hung up. 5 minutes later, my mum called. Her tone was warm, sugary. "Sweetheart, let's talk, okay?" I didn't answer. She left a voicemail instead. "Think about what this is doing to your brother, his reputation, his future. We're family. We protect each other. Don't let this go any further. You can still fix it." Fix it. As if I'd broken something. I didn't call back. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat by the window with a notepad and wrote 3 simple words at the top. "I choose me." Then I listed every time I hadn't. Every time I'd stepped aside, stayed quiet, swallowed pain so someone else could shine. I stopped at 15. Not because I ran out, but because I didn't need the whole list to make a decision. Evan had his chance. He could have chosen repair. He chose pride. So now he could choose the consequences too. The group call came at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. The calendar invite arrived 2 hours earlier. No warning, no subject line. Just the names. Mom, Dad, Evan. I knew what it was. The last push. The final attempt at guilt-wrapped diplomacy. But curiosity pulled me in. Not to be persuaded, not to be convinced, but to see who they were when the masks slipped. I joined 2 minutes late deliberately. Mum smiled too quickly, her tone forced cheerful. Claire, good. We were just about to start. Dad gave a nod. Thanks for joining us. Let's try to be civil. Evan appeared last, hoodie again, unshaven, shoulders hunched. He stared somewhere below the camera, face partially hidden by dim lighting. Claire, he said after a long silence, I'm sorry. It didn't land. Not because I didn't want it to, because it didn't sound like him. It sounded rehearsed, like something scripted by Mom. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he continued. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking. I didn't think you'd get so upset. Still, he didn't look at me. I tilted my head slightly. What exactly are you sorry for? He hesitated. For using your card? Or for getting caught? That made him flinch. Dad jumped in. Claire, this isn't helping. He's trying. Trying what? I asked, my voice calm. To reduce a crime to a misunderstanding. To act like this is just about one party. It was one party, Evan muttered. I leaned forward. No, Evan, it was one party on my birthday, funded by my card, after years of being treated like I don't exist. It was the last straw in a house built entirely of your needs and my silence. The screen went still. Mum cleared her throat. Look, I know mistakes were made, but if we keep pushing this, you're going to break this family beyond repair. I didn't break it, I said. I just finally stopped taping over the cracks. Evan shifted in his seat, finally glancing up just for a second. His eyes were red but dry. No real tears. Just the performance of regret. I said, I'm sorry, he snapped. What else do you want? I want you to mean it, I replied, and you don't. You want this to go away. You want me to absorb it like I always have. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I looked at each of their faces, one by one. My father, frowning like I was a problem to solve. My mother, stone-faced and tight-lipped. Evan, slouched in denial. And I realised. They weren't asking me to forgive. They were asking me to surrender. I sat back, folded my hands. Here's the thing, I said. I don't need anything from you anymore. Not an apology, not understanding, not approval. Another pause. Then what do you want? Mum asked. I looked directly into the camera. I want peace, and that starts with this. I'm done. Dad's brows furrowed. Done with what? With pretending this is normal, with pretending this is love, with showing up out of obligation and shrinking to fit your comfort. Evan looked stunned. Mom looked furious. I didn't wait for a reply. I hope someday you all understand why I had to do this, I said quietly. But even if you don't, I'm finally okay with that. And then for the second time that week, I clicked the red button. Leave meeting. The screen went dark. The silence that followed wasn't hollow, it was whole. A silence I had earned. A silence that, for the first time in my life, belonged entirely to me. 3 months later, I lived in another state. I didn't pack much when I left, just what fit into the back seat of my car and a few boxes I shipped ahead. The rest I donated or discarded. Leaving wasn't about taking things with me. It was about taking me with me, maybe for the first time in decades. The new apartment was modest. 1 bedroom, 2nd floor, a small balcony that overlooked a quiet street lined with sycamore trees. On weekends, joggers passed by us with dogs in tow. The air smelled like coffee in the morning and honeysuckle at night. It was, in every way that mattered, mine. I'd found a job at a local community college, a teaching position that paid less than my last one, but came with colleagues who remembered my name and students who actually listened. On my first day, someone brought me a plant for my desk. Welcome to the real world, she said, smiling. Her name was Leah, and by the end of the month we were splitting Friday dinners and debating whether olive oil should go on popcorn. No one here knew about Evan, or my parents, or the decades I'd spent playing the role of invisible support beam. They just knew Claire, the woman who liked mystery novels, drank too much tea, and kept a pair of emergency earrings in her desk drawer because she always forgot to wear any. That was enough. I went to bed early most nights, woke up before the sun, watered my plant, graded essays, went on long walks without telling anyone where I was going. The silence, once suffocating, had become a sanctuary. For the first time in my adult life, no one expected anything from me that I didn't willingly give. No one guilted me, no one leaned on me and then blamed me when I stumbled. No one demanded I contort myself into someone more palatable. And I had never felt more alive. It was on a Tuesday night, clear sky, breeze just cool enough to justify a light sweater, that I got the message. I was on the balcony, a cup of peppermint tea in hand, bare feet propped on the railing. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. I almost ignored it. But then I saw the name. Evan. The message was short. You win. I hope you're proud. No emoji, no punctuation. Just 7 words, flat and dull. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel smug. I didn't even feel sad. I felt distant, like he was a character from a book I'd read once in high school and never thought about again until someone mentioned it at a party. You win. As if this had been a game. I hope you're proud. I was. But not for the reasons he thought. I wasn't proud of exposing him or proving a point or surviving the fallout. I was proud that I'd finally stopped begging people to treat me like I mattered. Proud that I'd stopped trading my peace for proximity. Proud that I'd chosen myself, and not just in words, but in action. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the message beyond the preview screen. Instead, I turned my phone face down on the table, leaned back in my chair, and let the wind tangle in my hair. Below, someone laughed, a deep, belly-rich laugh, the kind that belongs to people who have never had to apologise for taking up space. I closed my eyes. This was peace, not a victory lap, not a clean ending. Just the quiet, powerful choice to be, without explanation, without permission, without guilt. And that, I decided, was enough. I set the kettle to boil, listening to the low rumble as steam began to hum from its spout. The kitchen was dimly lit, quiet except for the rhythmic tick of the wall clock and the occasional creak of floorboards beneath my feet. I moved slowly, deliberately, selecting a chamomile tea bag, placing it in my favourite blue ceramic mug, the one with a hairline crack no one could see unless they looked closely. Like me. I poured the hot water and watched the steam rise, the colour seep, the aroma fill the space around me. Then I picked up the mug with both hands and stepped out onto the balcony. The city spread before me, windows glowing like stars, tiny ant-like cars winding down streets, people moving through their evenings unaware of mine. There was something humbling about it, the vastness of the world outside my small circle of pain. I stood for a while, sipping slowly, letting the warmth settle into my chest. The message from Evan hadn't come again. No follow-up. No dramatic confrontation. Just those 7 words hanging in the digital void like a balloon with no string. You win. I hope you're proud. And now, hours later, I still didn't know exactly how to feel. I wasn't happy, not in the way I'd once imagined justice would feel. There was no celebration music playing in the background, no internal applause track. Just the rustle of tree leaves below and the faint chatter of someone's TV down the block. But I also wasn't angry, or heartbroken, or even relieved in the conventional sense. I was light. As if the decades-long weight I'd carried had finally lifted, not because someone else had taken it, but because I'd finally realised I didn't have to. I watched a plane blink across the sky, its red light pulsing like a heartbeat. Somewhere up there were strangers going somewhere new, unaware of the fact that down below a woman on a balcony was realising she had nothing left to prove. Not to her brother, not to her parents, not even to herself. The story wasn't wrapped in a perfect bow. Evan might spiral again. My parents would likely never admit fault. Holidays would be awkward or non-existent. My name might fade from group chats and family trees, but I wouldn't fade with it. I'd remain, whole, solid, present. For so long I'd mistaken silence for weakness. I thought staying quiet was noble, that restraint was a form of love. But silence, I'd learned, wasn't always grace. Sometimes it was survival. Sometimes it was a scream no one wanted to hear. And sometimes silence was the most powerful sentence you could deliver. Because silence says, you no longer have access to me. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't journal, I didn't text anyone a recap or ask if I'd done the right thing. I simply sat with my tea, the city, and myself. And I let the peace stretch, breath by breath into every part of me that had once been consumed by everyone else. That was the real twist. It wasn't justice that freed me. It was choosing, deliberately and completely, to stop being defined by what others had done. Imperfectly, slowly, but undeniably, I had come home to myself. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for anyone to open the door.